October 12th was billed as the Saturday that you did not want to miss on the college football calendar, and it certainly did not disappoint. The G5 race for an automatic spot seems to be narrowing. We'll talk about that. We're going to touch on all the happenings in the Power 4 conferences. As always, we will give you our updated ATB Top 12. You guys are not going to want to miss Guess the Spread at the end of the episode because you're not going to believe what my first bet of the week was. Welcome into another episode of Always Talking Ball. Tyler Noe, Lance Barton. We have a jam-packed show for you tonight. This episode is brought to you by Home Field Apparel. Get ready to elevate your game day wardrobe with Home Field Apparel. Their new quarter zips dropped, and they have the coziest hoodies, perfect for lounging on the couch while you cheer for your team. Our listeners, as you know, can score 15% off. ATB15 is the promo code. Do not miss out. Gear up for the season. Show your school spirit. Heck, you might even find a hoodie or something to wear for Halloween here in a couple weeks. You know, if you're opposing team, you can scare everybody by cheering for Ohio State if you're a Michigan fan. So, Lance, let's get it kicked off, man. What a freaking game in Eugene, Oregon last night. I was able to hop on with the 3-Tech guys last night on their live show. And in my opinion, game of the year right there. UGA Bama is a close second, but this game had basically start to finish, just back and forth. And obviously, you know, in the fourth quarter in crunch time, it had everything, man. I mean, and props to Oregon. They came into the game as home underdogs, and they did not back down from Ohio State. These two teams, I'd be shocked if we don't see both these teams in the college football playoff. I'd actually be a little shocked if we do not see these two teams rematch in Indianapolis on December 7th. But man, lots to talk about in this game. Ryan Day, Dan Lanning, one of them was going to win a big game, and it was Dan Lanning. So props to him. Ryan Day now falls to 1-7 versus AP top 5 opponents. Not a good look for him. You know, Ohio State fans are calling for his head, but with the new 12-team format, this result does not deteriorate any of the hopes and dreams that they had for this season coming into the year.
Not at all. And you're right. That was the game of the year so far. No doubt about it. And I want to start with, you know, we talked, and a lot of people talked going into this game about Dillon Gabriel's kind of seemed like struggles of pushing the ball down the field. And some turnover issues in the red zone. And could he get it done against this good of a defense in Ohio State, which in my opinion is still the best defense in the country? And he answered all those questions and more. We said that if Oregon was going to win this game, he would have to be the difference. And he was that. He was every bit of that. His ability to hit the home run ball in this game and the explosive plays killed Ohio State in this game. Denzel Burke was good. I think he just got burned again or missed a tackle again. But the transfers, Oregon was one of those that stepped up big time in the transfer portal, and they definitely stepped up. Evan Stewart at receiver and Dillon Gabriel just lit it up for the Ducks. And let's just start there. I mean, the Buckeye defense in this game, I mean, the defensive line, solid, whatnot, but Ohio State was just another example of what I've talked about on this podcast before, talked about it last year. The top-tier defenses, when they face the best offenses that have the best weapons and play callers and quarterbacks, all of that, it's rare that the defense actually gets stops and like not get stops, but actually shuts them down or slows that team down. We've seen it many times with the Kirby Smart Georgia defenses. We've seen it with the Nick Saban Alabama defenses. And we saw it with Ohio State in this game that the best offenses in the country just are too good to be able to stop. And Chip Kelly and Ohio State, they were really good the entire game. This was, in my opinion, nobody really going and losing the game. It was a well-played game on both sides of the ball for both teams, and that is why that it is the game of the year. I know everybody wants to say Georgia, Alabama, but that game was 28-0 at one point, 30-7, and then Georgia was running away with it in the second half themselves. It was basically a tale of two halves. This was a war from the jump in this game. And what's kind of scary about this Oregon deal is you have the Trayshawn Holden deal spitting on someone's, another player's hand. You just can't do that, man. That's a joke, first off. But he gets thrown out of the game, and you have Jordan Birch, their best defensive lineman, doesn't play in this game, and they still found a way to win. And so I think Oregon got a lot of people's attention last night, because I'll be honest with you, I was definitely one of those that was doubting them as far as, I even said a few weeks ago, I did not think this was a national championship contender. I'll eat crow. They are. Obviously, if they can beat the Buckeyes, they are. And that was as big of a win as I can remember in a long, I guess probably since Mario Cristobal and Oregon went to Ohio State a few years ago and beat the Buckeyes on the road there. But I don't think really anybody thought, maybe after that game they did, but I don't think anybody thought that Oregon team was a true national championship contender. People this year thought this Oregon team was going into the season, and they went out and proved it. And everything we love about college football, dude, how sick was Austin Stadium?
Ohio State fans I'm seeing on Twitter, they said it was the loudest stadium they've ever been in.
Yeah.
They set a record. It was only 60,000 people in there. You're talking, compared to some of these SEC stadiums that are super loud and 100,000, that's a lot of noise being created from 60,000 people.
You know what I compare it to? I've actually always said this. It's very similar to me to when Virginia Tech was at its peak, when Virginia Tech was really good and Blacksburg was at its peak. That's what Blacksburg and Lane Stadium's like. It's not very big, but all opposing fans that go to that stadium say the same thing back then. Yep. And Ohio State, obviously they've been to Beaver Stadium against Penn State. They've been to the Big House. You were even saying it about how there's a lot more people at the Big House, but it's not as loud as Autzen. And it definitely seemed like that last night, man. Ohio State, the procedure penalties that they had, the false starts, and some of the miscues that they had, it made an impact. It made an impact, no doubt about it.
Yeah. A couple things I should have stuck with my gut. If you remember our preseason episode, I picked Oregon was the only team I picked to go 12-0 in the regular season. I had them winning this game, and I had them losing in the Big Ten championship. And of course, I'm an idiot. And yesterday I bet the Buckeyes to cover the spread on the road, and they made me pay for it. What's funny about that Trayshawn Holden ejected for spitting, that was after that onside kick that I still don't know if we've got a full answer if that was done on purpose or not, when that guy just absolutely rocketed it off that guy in the front line.
He should say it was on purpose. He should say it.
Dylan Gabriel, yes, heck of a game. The preseason Heisman front runner has now joined the Heisman race.
Yep.
After that game.
Absolutely.
And props to Oregon too. You mentioned the crowd, and they could have easily, they were quiet. You were talking about in our chat, you were flipping over, the volume of the LSU game because the environment was crazy over there. And that first drive with Ohio State just marching down the field, and obviously, we're going to put an asterisk on that first drive because it's absolutely inexcusable that the officials did not review that play that Oregon had intercepted the ball. Everybody who's watching that sees that Oregon, if anything, I don't even know if anything it's an incomplete pass because it never hit the ground. The guy for Ohio State never had the ball. So, you kind of gift.
How awful is replay in college football right now, dude? Sean McDonough, I don't know if you caught it because I'm sure you had the volume on the Oregon game. Sean McDonough was blasting replay, and during the LSU game was just blasting replay officials and just replay in general in college football. I'm not going to go off on a tangent, but I'm just going to tell you what he said because I believe it 100% true what he said. I was surprised he went this crazy on it, but he literally said that right now, instant replay in college football, when they go to the replay, it is, I think it could be, might be, it looks like it is, so I think it is, so this is the play. That's 100% indisputable, inconclusive, whatever. All the language that they're supposed to be using, they're not using it. It is literally, I think that's what happened. I could see that, but I'm not sure, so that's what I'm going to go with. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, I can't remember what game it was yesterday, but one of the commentators basically said, so we've just completely thrown out inconclusive evidence, of indisputable evidence.
During the LSU game, you might have been watching there at that point.
Maybe I was watching it.
Yeah, it was late.
completely ignored that now. It's off the rails. And
Yeah.
Joel Klatt is, as always, he's doing a good job. He's advocating for a full-time officials and a consistency across the conferences. Right now you have conference officials, so they judge things differently between the conferences. And that's just, it'd be like the AFC and the NFC and the NFL judging things differently and having two sets of referees. And it just makes no sense, but that's the NCAA for you. But back to the game. It was, in the summertime, we talked a lot about Oregon's offensive line, and those first 2 weeks, they did not look good. Nope. Obviously, we're learning more about Boise State, but the Idaho game was no excuse. After the Boise State game, they made some changes on the offensive line. They shifted around from center to right guard, to left guard. They switched some things around, and since then, they have been solid. They did not allow a sack last night. Ohio State could not get pressure with 4. So that was one of the shocking things to me. And then we got to get to the last drive, right, for Ohio State. So Oregon goes down and they score. Ohio State gets the ball back with, I believe, a little over 2 minutes to go. Or maybe it was right under the 2 minute warning. I can't remember. They had timeouts left. And it just didn't seem like they were in any sort of rush during that 2 minute drill. Ryan Day is just obviously going to take that timeout to his grave with him. And
looked like it was a minute 47 to go.
Minute 47. Okay. So they called a couple timeouts, and then the clock gets down to 10 seconds left. And it's been it's been much discussed on X today. And I kind of mentioned it on the episode last night with 3Tech. There's 10 seconds left. Oregon calls a timeout. And instead of having 12 guys in the huddle, they have 11 guys in the huddle, completely legal. And you run a late guy onto the field. And so there's 12 guys on the field. They overloaded the right side. So obviously there was a one-on-one on the left side. That's where Will Howard went. Jabbar Muhammad made a great play to break it up. They get the penalty. 4 seconds go off the clock. And it's just a 5-yard penalty. You don't really care about the yardage there because, giving them 5 yards is still going to be, it'd be like a 60-yard field goal attempt, right? So you got 6 seconds left, enough for maybe one play. And then if you can get a quick pass, out of bounds 1 second, down really quick with 1 second. It didn't work out like that. Will Howard scrambles for just like a quick second. If he would have tucked it and did a quarterback draw immediately and slid, they probably would have had time, and they probably would have had time to try a game-winning field goal. He slides with about as the clock turned to 0, and that was all she wrote. And so I don't know if we'll ever be told if that was on purpose or not, but Ohio State fans online are, questioning the rules. The rules need to be changed then because, of course, it went against them. So the rules need to be changed. And my thought is why not run 5 guys on there and have, 16 guys versus 11 if it's only going to be a 5-yard penalty? It's kind of like in the first half of a game, if there's 7 seconds left and they're trying to throw a pass to the end zone, just tackle the receiver, especially in college. Just tackle him.
It's just 15 yards.
15 yards, yeah. So that was a very, very interesting last 10 seconds.
Just to kind of clear it one more time, guys, you can go find this on X. Like I said, literally right before Ohio State snapped the ball, Oregon ran another player out onto the field on defense and basically was making sure that Ohio State was not going to get a big play. They used the rules, call it what you. I don't know if they did it on purpose or not, but it looked like it was on purpose.
And Ryan Day's over there saying they've got 12 guys on the field,
Yeah, it looked like it was on purpose because, like you said, Oregon knew that they were just going to give up a 5-yard penalty, and they still weren't in field goal range if that happened, and they were going to run like the guy said on Twitter, 5 seconds was way more important going off the clock than Ohio State getting a big play.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. That was, if they did that on purpose, they used the rules to their advantage. And all this talk about the injuries and teams faking injuries and stuff and saying that that's against the ethics of whatever. I don't really know how I feel about it, to be honest with you. But I will say that, if that's a rule and you played within the rules, you're going to get a penalty, get a 5-yard penalty. I don't really know. I don't know that I see anything really wrong with it. I got 2 more things I want to say on this game. Number 1, everybody's going to crush. I get it. It's what we do as a society now, but in general. but especially in college football, everybody just crushed Will Howard after the game. Dude played his ass off last night. For all the questions about him as well. Could he play in a big game? Could he lead this offense and make the throws? The answer is yes, he can. He thoroughly impressed me last night in that game. He was much better than I honestly expect. Both quarterbacks were better than we've seen Gabriel go do it. We haven't seen, I know Will Howard played well at Kansas State, but he has not played in a game yet in that type of like environment, in that spot with all that pressure. And he played really well. Number two, the freaking offensive coordinators were in their bag last night in that game. Y'all know, if you listen to the show, my affinity for both of these cats, Will Stein and Chip Kelly. And two totally different. Chip Kelly been in football forever. He's like a savant. And Will Stein is the young gun that's been tearing it up everywhere he's been at UTSA and now at Oregon. But Will Stein earned him some money last night in that game, showing what he could do against a Jim Knowles. And again, I don't care what anybody says. Ohio State's the best defense in college football. Well, they got torched by Oregon. Go find me some defenses that's going to stop that Oregon offense the other night, last night. So, great game. I'm with you. For all the people that say, I don't want to see teams play multiple times, sign me all the way up for Ducks and Bucks again.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say, too, is, Oregon and their running game really impressed me, too. Jordan James.
The whole offense, man. Yeah.
23 carries for 115 yards, 5 yards a pop against that Ohio State defense. And there wasn't, his longest run was 25. And then obviously holding Quinshon Judkins to 11 carries for 23 yards. And Travion Henderson had 10 for 87, but 53 of those was on one carry. So you got 9 for 34 on the other carry. So just a well-rounded game all around. And, I'll take that again in 2 months and then a month after that. If people complain about college teams playing 3 times a year, you just don't like good football then. So,
agreed.
Yeah. The faking the injuries thing, perfect segue to our next game. Ole Miss, LSU.
What game?
I'll just say right off the bat, I got no respect for Ole Miss, like as they do that. It is very clearly documented on video right now that they're doing that, and there's stuff going on the sidelines. And I get it, it's legal. It's like sign stealing, right? Like legal sign stealing. You got Lane over there, pulling his shirt up and saying stuff, and guys just going down. Because you can talk to the middle linebacker. So the middle linebacker is talking to any other player, and they go down. Yep. You know exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And again, it's within the rules, and until college football decides to make a rule change.
But hey, it's going to get changed, because the moment it gets on, like I said, Herbie, Saban, that bunch on game day, bringing it to light like they did, and literally saying it's unethical, it's scum, whatever, all that stuff. It'll get changed. I 100% believe that after this year, there'll be something that'll be changed, but there's a fine line they've got to walk because of what if somebody really is injured.
Right.
But you're right. Ole Miss is without a doubt blatantly doing it in a cheating fashion. No doubt.
Yeah.
I say cheating, not cheating, but they're doing it in an unethical fashion.
Right. Yeah. This game, 29-26 in overtime. LSU wins it. They don't lead until the final play of overtime, where Nussmeier completes a 25-yard touchdown pass to Kyron Lacey. Best defensive effort from LSU in, 2, maybe 3 years, right?
Hey, what'd we say, man? Like I said, we get a lot of things wrong. We get some things right, but we said going into this game with a bye week, we're going to find out about Blake Baker and this defensive staff. All these great defensive guys that they brought in the offseason and hired that staff. And, dude, you're right. What an effort against a really good offense.
Yeah. And, again, we literally talked about it, though, this past week. Is it a really good offense at Ole Miss? We talked about Tennessee just getting slammed, by everybody talking about their offense and everything. But Ole Miss put up 17 against Kentucky. They put up 27 against South Carolina. And here they are, obviously just struggling. They had many chances to pull away from LSU. And everybody's sitting there watching this game knowing LSU's defense is the weakness of their team. Obviously, they played really well yesterday. But my questions were about Jackson Dart at the beginning of the season, and they were about him, middle of the season. And it's still, I mean, it's still there.
I'll say this about a Lane Kiffin offense. Everybody thinks kind of like Heupel in Tennessee, and like even Lincoln Riley. Everybody thinks they're just high flying, air raid, throw the ball all over the place. All those three guys have one thing in common: they love to run the football. Their best offenses run the rock, and Kiffin is absolutely that way. I mean, you think of Quinshon Judkins a couple years ago, led the SEC in carries and yards and broke all these freshman records in the Southeastern Conference. I mean, Derrick Henry used to tote the rock about 40 times a game at Bama when Lane Kiffin was the OC. So he wants to run the football. That is number one of a problem. They're not lining up right now and just pounding the football. And Henry Parrish, I think his name, Parrish was out last night. So I think that was tough, not having him. But, dude, they don't have that, like, physical Quinshon Judkins. They've got fast, solid, speedy backs, but they don't have the guy that they're just going to line up and say, we're coming right here, do something about it type of cat anymore. And they're really using Jackson Dart a lot. In their power run game, it's Jackson Dart that they're using in that. Number two is the 12 penalties for 110 yards. The amount of negative plays, like they'll have a good play and it gets called back because of a hold or a procedure, whatever. The penalties on offense are killing them too. And then 2 turnovers. You have 12 penalties for 110 yards and 2 turnovers, and you're 41 carries in this game at about 4 yards a clip. If you run it that many times and you're going to be successful, you need to average more yards than that.
Yeah.
But like you said, I think it's time to do it. If they're not going to be successful at running the ball, what has to happen for them to be successful? Jackson Dart has to be a dude. And he's good, but he's not doing what Dylan Gabriel did last night against Ohio State.
In his defense, Trey Harris did drop a touchdown pass in the first quarter.
Early on,
people, I mean, nobody really remembers that because it was a great game the rest of the way, but that really came back to bite them.
I mean, Dart was 24 for 42. I mean, a box score Barry here, but that's, barely over 50%. Against a defense. I mean, like you said, LSU, let's give credit. Let's don't just, I'm not piling up on Dart here. There's going to be a few quarterbacks we're going to talk about today that it's time that it's fair to throw some questions out. Dart's one of them. He's supposed to be this Heisman Trophy candidate and all this stuff this year, and has all these weapons around him. I know that there's a few injuries with his weapons, but still, he needs to be better if they're going to compete at a national championship level. Defensively for Ole Miss, again, they're so much better defensively. They are. That's a good offense there for LSU. And Nussmeier is a damn good quarterback. Some of the throws he's making, man, like he has an NFL arm. I'm not going to give out a hot take and say he's going to be some big-time NFL quarterback. I have no idea. But I've already done that on a couple of guys that turned out bad. But he has an NFL arm. He can make every throw on the field that you want to make. I mean, he's making the types of anticipation throws, too. Like they were Greg McElroy was calling the game, was talking about it. Dude, some of the throws this guy was making, unbelievable in that game.
Yeah.
But I can't remember the stats you threw out, but Brian Kelly, man, off a bye with more than 1 week to prepare. And his record at night in Death Valley just keeps getting it done.
Yeah, he was 13-0 straight up in night games in Death Valley.
Yeah, which, doesn't hurt that you've got that freaking place behind you. And, dude, I'll say it, best fan base in college football. That video leaking out on X with little Boosie set it off just in the whole crowd. I've been to games there. It's so awesome, man, that you've got like old women. I promise you, they're sitting there just bouncing, going, set it off in this. Yeah, they're sitting there just doing that in the stands. I promise you. I didn't finish the rest of that lyric. But, dude, can you imagine that? Like some old lady sitting there beside you just bouncing, going, Boosie badass, and I'll punish you. Like, that would be amazing to see that in the stands. But, that's LSU. That's just a different world down there, man. And if you got to play that bunch and you see on the schedule that game's at night, you in trouble. You're in trouble.
Yeah, let's look ahead to LSU, man. They're now 2-0 in the SEC. And they've got a big one coming up at Arkansas this week. They've got at A&M, so they got back-to-back road games coming up. Are they any threat right now to challenge for the SEC championship?
Yeah, they are. Because the SEC right now, I mean, Texas does seem like the best team, but they really haven't. Like, it's weird to say this. It's not Texas's fault that Michigan has to be a little down this year, but Texas is one of the best teams in college football right now, but also the opponents they've played, Oklahoma can barely get first downs on offense right now, got 5 receivers out. And yeah, I mean, the SEC right now is pretty wide open between probably five teams right now.
Yeah.
Unless I'm forgetting somebody. And LSU's in the thick of it. And they've got a couple of receivers that have been out. Your boys, is it CJ Daniels? Is that his name? The cat from Liberty? Missed a couple of games. I think Hilton's the other guy's last name. That's their big play receiver. Defense is improving, getting better, looks like, with this new staff. And I know that everybody can think what they want of Brian Kelly, but his teams do seem to get better as the year goes along. Always has. You probably know that better than anybody. And at LSU, it's been that way. He'll drop that dumb game for open the season. He'll lose another game early on in the year, and then he wins the rest of his two. Yeah, I think LSU's right in the thick of this thing, especially when you look at their schedule. If they can win, when do they go to College Station? I don't. If you don't have it in front of you, I know I just put you on the spot.
26th.
26th?
Right after Arkansas, right before Alabama.
So the 26th, then they get a bye week and get Bama, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, if they get that A&M game, I mean, it looked to me, unless they drop some weird game, which could be this week, unless they drop some weird game, and they're probably a 10-2 team.
That hits the over on the 9, so
it does.
I like that. Let's go back to the Big Ten, but we're going to go out to L.A. for Penn State USC.
Dude,
and
this was a week that we needed college football red zone.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
And you just keep going in these games, overtime, fourth quarter, and
witching hour. Noon slate, I mean, if you looked at it on paper, it was kind of the week, you're kind of getting set up for 3:30. Obviously, we'll talk about a noon game here in a second, but Penn State USC, Penn State goes on the road. It was another coaching matchup between guys who really needed something to prove, James Franklin and Lincoln Riley. Penn State, that first half looked like they were still on the plane on the way out to Los Angeles. You mentioned it multiple times. They looked incredibly slow. Lincoln was dialing up plays. I mean, he had guys motioning everywhere. He was getting his guys out in space.
He was in his bag.
Quentin Joyner's 75-yard touchdown run, and Penn State just looked lost. All they had really on offense in that first half, and really all game until the fourth quarter, was Tyler Warren. I mean, if dude's going to win a Heisman this year, that would be – it'd be crazy for people to start bringing that up, but he had 17 catches yesterday, and he's ran for a touchdown in this season. He's passed for a couple touchdowns this season even. So he's kind of like a jack of all trades. He wears number 44. He's a tight end. He snaps the ball too, right? And then he catches it. I mean, that was an unbelievable play.
Dude, that play was one of the – first off, Andy Kotelnicki. We're talking about all these OCs being in their bag, all these play callers. What a unbelievable play. Have you ever seen that?
Mm-mm.
Me either. Never seen someone snap the ball from the – if you haven't seen this, know what we're talking about. The tight end literally lined up on the end of the line of scrimmage. They snapped the ball from him. He was lined up at tight end in his normal position, and they snapped it from him. And then he ran down the middle of the field, down the seam, and USC was looking – they actually had it covered, but they got a one-on-one. What they wanted was a one-on-one. And they got a one-on-one matchup, and they just threw an alley-oop in the end zone, and he went up and got it.
I can't believe that dude is winning one-on-one battles like that with guys from USC.
Yeah.
It's just funny to watch. But this game, again, Penn State comes storming back in the second half. They were down 20-6 at halftime. They come storming back. They make it a game. You get to the final 2 minutes, and it's 23-23. And just coaching, college football coaching, and just brutal clock management. USC ran 5 plays in the final 2 minutes. I have no idea what Lincoln Riley, I know he still had a couple yards to go, but I have no idea
Three
why
timeout.
yeah, 3 timeouts. I don't know why he's letting the clock trickle all the way down to 14 seconds. And then I don't know why James Franklin decided to call a timeout there. And obviously he got bailed out because the very next play, Penn State intercepted Miller Moss's pass. But he called timeout knowing that Lincoln Riley and USC had 3 timeouts as well. And I mean, Lincoln Riley, he knows offense. He could have dialed up a play there, and Miller Moss could have hit a guy over the middle for 15 yards, called a timeout, and kicked a field goal. And it looked like, it really looked like Lincoln Riley was ready to go to overtime and keep those 3 timeouts.
I'm with you, man. We've seen a lot of coaching malpractice and the amount of clock management stuff that goes on at the end of games. I'm going to be up front with you. Last year, you said something about like how all these coaches, they should have to, like part of their deal, they should have to sit down and play like Madden or NCAA. Now I think play NCAA. Sit down and play NCAA with a video game and actually like manage a clock on the last 2 minutes with 3 timeouts or whatever, 1 drive to go. I thought that was one of the goofiest things you've ever said. And I saw all these people on Twitter yesterday saying this exact same thing, man. Yeah. There were all these people on Twitter saying these coaches should have to sit down and play NCAA football and actually manage clock and like talk into a microphone and say what they should do, what you should do, what you should, all this kind of stuff in interviews or whatever. But you're right, man. That was atrocious. At one point, like, dude, they like they're running the entire play clock off.
Yeah.
I don't know if like people like Lincoln Riley, he's not used to being in situations. I don't know, man. There's no excuse. So
Yep. And then overtime, they miss a field goal and Penn State gets it done. And so let's talk about Lincoln Riley first. He was 5-7 in his last 12 games after last week. Now he's 4-8.
Or 5-8.
Where does well, over his last 12 games.
Got you.
Yeah. So 4-8. 5 over his last 13. But where does USC and Lincoln Riley, where do they go from here? Because again, I told you midweek, I'm not buying the whole Josh Pate angle of it's his first year of a rebuild. Like, he's been there 3 years. He hired the wrong people. You don't get a pass for that. Nobody else does. The guys last night said it'd be like Jimbo Fisher in his 6th year, saying he's actually in the first year of his rebuild. He's hired some new guys. So hired Bobby Petrino finally. Like, you don't get a pass for that.
No, I'll be honest with you, I don't really know the answer just because, Ohio State and Oregon clearly look like significantly better programs than USC right now. But outside of that, you saw, we watched the game on the field. They're not like far away from Penn State or anything like that right now. They're not far away from, we don't have a clue what Michigan's going to be going forward now without Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
I'm not hitting the panic button yet for them, but it's fair, absolutely fair to question. And yes, I don't give them excuses or anything like that. He's the one that hired the other defensive coordinator and kept him for as long as he did. I do give him credit for making a really good hire like D'Anton Lynn, but now he's going to have to go get players and have to turn it around. But speaking of coaching, I want to give beyond just incredible amounts of credit to Penn State. At halftime, I remember texting you. I talked to my dad on the phone, and I said, Penn State looks like their feet are stuck in concrete compared to USC. Mm-hmm. The speed differential was insane in that first half. And the second half showed me that it wasn't necessarily speed differential. It was, I don't know what Tom Allen and them were doing in the first half, but it seems like they changed up. Again, I'm not some huge X's and O's guru, but whatever adjustments they made there in that second half is incredible.
Yeah, they definitely look faster. I think they were in their locker room chugging Celsius or something. Props to Celsius. We're open for sponsorship, but they definitely looked like they had more energy.
Yeah, they did. And offensively, they opened more things up. They kept going to Tyler Warren. They said, this is working. We're going to keep going to him.
And I couldn't believe that USC just kept leaving that dude alone.
Yeah.
You see 44 on the field, you got to put at least one guy on him, but I'd put 2 on him at least.
Yep. Well, again, man, we saw yesterday, like Chip Kelly, incredible at Ohio State calling a game. He was nothing he did was any reason why Ohio State lost that game. And Andy Kotelnicki, the hire that they made there is such a big deal for them. Not just this year, but going forward, man. You have something now to sell to playmakers on the outside at receiver because they need them bad. Julian Fleming finally showed up and made some plays. But they got something now they can sell to big-time QBs and to playmakers on the outside with a guy like that there calling plays.
Yeah. And it was the best Drew Aller had looked in a long time. I know he still gets happy feet back there, but they've got to have guys other than Tyler Warren that he can throw the ball to. And again, that fourth quarter drive, Julian Fleming, a couple fourth down conversion catches for him. So if they can do that on a more consistent basis, I think they will be taken a lot more seriously by, the college football fans who don't think of them as like an elite program.
Yeah.
I think they're always just a really good team. So where does Penn State go from here? Obviously, they're 6-0 now, and they've got Ohio State coming in a couple weeks, and at home in Happy Valley, mind you. So obviously, they're still in the race for the Big Ten. And James Franklin got a little monkey off his back, winning a big game on the road. Obviously, it was an unranked opponent, but we'll see how he does in a couple weeks against Ohio State.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they're after that win. I'll be shocked if they're not a playoff team. I'll be shocked if they're not a playoff team. And again, as far as confidence moving forward, if you're a Penn State fan, you've got to feel good about seeing Drew Aller make the plays he was making down the stretch in a big game in pressure situations and actually making throws, like all those fourth down conversions that you saw there late where to tie the game up like they did and stuff. Like those were just as pressure situations as it gets. And they're doing it through the air. Like that's not what we've seen, man.
They didn't even think about running the ball that last drive too, which is
I mean, dude, Penn State had 31 carries for only 118 yards in the game.
We thought they'd be able to run, and they just didn't stick to it.
They had 400 yards passing.
Yeah.
Like, so, I mean, I still think Penn State can run the ball. They just they didn't run it well in this game, and they still got it done.
All right, let's transition to the next game. We probably should have talked about this first so I could figure out how much time we'd have left in the episode. But
I'm not going to go crazy.
Let's talk about Bama, South Carolina. This was the game of the noon slate that turned out to be what everyone was watching. Again, a 21-point spread for Alabama at home, and they came out looking great, up 14-0. And then, man, just a meltdown at the end of the half for Alabama. And then the second half, it didn't get any better for them. The Gamecocks' third quarter, 16 play, 85-yard touchdown drive to open that half. Bama has allowed 3 such drives this season that have been over 16 plays. Wisconsin did it once, Vandy did it once. From 2014 to 2023, they allowed 1 drive like that. From 2014 to 2023, 10 seasons, they allowed 1 drive like that. It just feels a little different to me than the whole 2-game swing with Texas and USF last year. More concerning, I'll say. I mean, you were a lot less concerned. I think you were telling everyone to relax. And I think there's still some of that a little bit this year, but it does feel different. I think the intimidation factor for Alabama has been gone.
You want to know the biggest difference? I'm gonna let you keep them. The biggest difference is Nick Saban had the credibility.
Yeah.
Kane, as far as we're talking about defense right now.
Yeah.
Kane Womack, as much as I loved him going into this year, and he endeared himself a lot to Alabama fans in the offseason. That is gone now. He doesn't have the cachet or the credibility yet as a coach to make me feel like I shouldn't be concerned or to make Alabama fans feel like they shouldn't be concerned. He doesn't. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I know you want to talk a little bit more about just the coaching staff in general, but I mean, speaking of coaching, it's just my opinion, and I know players get into the swing of things and things happen, and obviously you want to score a touchdown, but to me, that when it's under 2 minutes and the opposing team doesn't have a timeout, I get the play you're running, and Bernard caught it at like the 5-yard line, and his momentum's carrying him in, but like you got to tell your player to get down, like. And they probably just thought like he's going to score and like, we'll win 27-19. There's no issue. And it just did not go as easy as planned. Obviously they went down the field in 6 plays. Nick Harbor, we talked about him 14 months ago, right? You were talking about
we had
him
a Nick
last
Harbor
year.
sighting.
Exactly. And he made a heck of a catch and a toe tap touchdown. And if it wasn't for Lenore Sellers overthrowing just another wide open Gamecocks receiver in the back of the end zone, that game would have been tied. And then to top it off, they get the onside kick, and then they revert back to Sellers trying to pass the ball to toddlers that are running out there. So
Bama went cover 0, just all out blitz. Like I think if you were to have been in, honestly, it was the same mindset I had. I was sitting there on the couch, literally going, "F it, send everybody." If they win this game, it's not going to be because the quarterback has time to throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Go get him. And they literally did that every play. Yep. It was man-to-man on the outside, one-on-one, and every other body out there was coming after the quarterback. And it worked.
Yeah, they knew they didn't have any timeouts, and they had to get, maybe 15, 20 yards to get into like a field goal range. And
new college kickers, bro. But South Carolina's kicker couldn't kick it like my alma mater high school. He's trash, bro. Good Lord.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say about Alabama, and I told you this, is, and I think I've even mentioned it before on the show, is right now their biggest problem on offense, and they don't have a lot because their offense is pretty good, but their biggest problem is that they've got 2 guys, and that's it. Yep. It's Jalen Milroe and it's Ryan Williams. And we learned yesterday that even a team like South Carolina, who the previous week got stuffed by Ole Miss repeatedly, and then, just lost at home 27-3. If opposing defenses can figure out a way to neutralize Ryan Williams, where else does Jalen Milroe go except for using his legs, right? He had a couple plays of Jeremy Bernard yesterday. They've got to be able to run the ball more consistently. But if they can neutralize, because Ryan Williams had 4 catches for 32 yards, right? Yep. So no big plays. They kept everything in front of them. This was just a wild game, man.
Yeah, it was. You're right. I put on Twitter yesterday at one point during the game when I was in panic mode that, Alabama right now has 2 players on offense making plays. They're not getting enough pressure on the quarterback. They have to blitz to get pressure on the quarterback right now. The defensive backs are not covering very well, especially on 3rd and 4th down. They're not able to cover. Offensively, they're not running the football well. It's strange. It really is. It's strange. This hasn't been going on all year, but the last since halftime of the Georgia game, it's been ugly.
I think they're running the football well. You and I talked about it. It seems
like not running enough.
Sticking with it.
Yeah, they won't stick with it. So here's my without going on for 10 minutes. Here is my take right now of what I'm seeing. Number one, they're pressing, no doubt. As a coaching staff and as players, they are absolutely pressing. Number 2, I believe that right now you've got a team that Kalen DeBoer and his system offensively is like what we saw with Michael Penix and all those receivers last year at Washington, and in a kind of a little bit, not like small, but smaller than what Alabama's offensive line is, like more athletic offensive line. There were things that they had Michael Penix dropping back and distributing the rock to playmakers on the outside. Just being like a point guard, distributing the football all over the field. And offensive linemen doing these different, again, I'm not some X's and O's guru, but they won the Joe Moore Award last year because of how good they were at pass blocking and keeping Michael Penix clean. That is not what Jalen Milroe is. Not Michael Penix. He is not a distributor of the football. He's not. Number 2, Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan and all that crew that they had at receivers at Washington is not in Tuscaloosa. Strange to say that, I know, with all the talent. But everybody's been talking about Bama's receivers the last couple of years and how they're not as great across the board. You're right. They're not. They're solid. They're fine. But they're not like 3 or 4 just studs out there running around at receiver.
I mean, there's a reason Jeremy Bernard was wide receiver 4 or 5 last year,
Right. Again, he's
Yeah.
fine. He's solid. Alabama can win a lot of football games with those guys. But, like, as far as them just going out and blowing out teams, playing this style of play, this is not like what I think if you even talk to DeBoer's even kind of code name even said it. Talked about how we haven't even implemented, like Alabama hasn't even implemented like 60% or something of the offense yet. And he said they may not the entire year.
Yeah.
Why is that? It's because the quarterback can't do what Michael Penix did. But Milroe does other things extremely well in the run game. And they have 2 really good running backs. They have 5 offensive linemen that are like 330-pound plus that can move you and push you around, but they're asking them to be like in space against really good pass rushers and trying to distribute the football all over the field in the passing game.
Mm-hmm.
But I just said all of that, and that's fine. But they ran a tight end screen that was a perfect example of this. In the second half, they ran a screen to the tight end. And they had Caden Proctor out in wide open space, out in the field as a lead blocker trying to take on a safety in open field. And he looked like me out there trying to take on that safety in open field. Caden Proctor at 6'7", 500 pounds is not going to be out there in open space taking on safeties. That safety just made one little move and went around him and made the tackle. But at Washington last year, they could do stuff like that.
Caden Proctor's probably thinking at Iowa they would just run it right up the gut. You can walk straight ahead.
Yeah, but like I agree. I don't know why they won't commit to it. But like the problem's not on offense. The problem is defense. I don't really need to even launch off into a bunch of stuff because it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Right now, it's 2 things. Number one, it looks like from a schematic standpoint, all of your college football nerd gurus that come on shows or whatever that like used to play football, that break down film and really know what they're talking about, they talk about how it looks like that right now Alabama's defense from a schematic standpoint is being figured out and that they're a little predictable on certain plays, especially on third downs and stuff. And they're not getting pressure on the quarterback. That's number one. Number two, this is the bigger problem. South Carolina a lot yesterday, especially in that second half. I mean, dude, they're just lining up, running between the tackles and off tackle, 4 yards. Vandy did it. Vandy did it too, missing some tackles. That is the problem for me. I feel like that the scheme stuff eventually, that kind of stuff, maybe again I'm wrong, can get fixed.
It's a bad thing that the only thing Tennessee can do on offense is run the ball.
Yeah. Well, I wonder we'll talk about that game later and stuff. But right now, I said all that, and I'll say this. I'm still not like panicked, but I am as worried as I've been in a long time. Because I believe in Kalen DeBoer. I do believe Kalen DeBoer is going to do a good job in Tuscaloosa. I really do. Despite what you probably see on the stupid Feinbaum show and everything else from other fans. The jury's out on Kane Womack for me right now. I believe they can turn it around. It's a long season, but right now the jury's out for me on that.
Yep.
Who we got next?
Real quick, let's talk Red River. Texas goes in. They bully Oklahoma 34-3. Get shut out in the first half. Quinn Ewers, predictable. He looked rusty coming off that injury. Threw an early pick. But luckily, Oklahoma turned that into 0 points. It was pretty evident from the jump that they weren't going to do anything today. And then that avalanche just crushed them in the second quarter, just touchdown after touchdown. Yeah. And I think as soon as Texas went up 21-3, I just think they went super vanilla. Yeah. And they looked across the field and they said, Michael Hawkins is not beating us. Nobody on that Oklahoma offense is putting up 22 points total to beat us, and we're probably going to get a couple more scores anyways. So I think they went vanilla. The game to worry about for them has always been this week. Obviously, after the Red River, it's been noted that after a Red River rivalry, Red River Shootout, they struggle, okay? On the Oklahoma side, it's just absolutely no reason for Venables not to go back to Jackson Arnold.
Thank you. That's where I wanted to go with this.
Point.
Thank you.
This is the dude that you literally went through spring and fall camp And you named him your starting quarterback from the beginning of the season. And yes, we all saw the first couple weeks, and we all saw the Tennessee game where he had the deer in the headlights look. Okay, didn't look great at all. You put Michael Hawkins in, and then you start Michael Hawkins at Auburn. You frankly get lucky to win that game at Auburn.
Yeah.
Auburn basically gifted you that game. And again, through that first half, and they even interviewed Venables about it at halftime, and he said he's doing okay. And everybody else watching that game is thinking, why would you not go back to the guy that you had faith in all along? It didn't make any sense to me that, like,
couldn't agree more.
You're just going to trot out Michael Hawkins. It's like, and Herbie's on the television saying, everything I'm hearing is that Jackson Arnold is engaged. Like, you hear some of these benches and these guys, they check out, right? And they're like, I'm hitting the transfer portal. Everything he's hearing is Jackson Arnold is engaged, and he is in the meetings. He's helping out Michael Hawkins as much as he can, and he's invested. He's fully invested in Oklahoma. So there's got to be, I mean, I don't know if there's something underlying between him and Venables or what, but that was just, it's not like you're tanking for a draft pick here, man. Like, you got to trot out anything you think is going to light a spark.
Yeah, I look, that was well said. So all I'm going to add to it is, I agree. I don't understand. What I said at halftime was Oklahoma's got a 0% chance to win this game with Michael Hawkins right now. Can it get worse with Jackson? Maybe it could, but like, you literally have a 0% chance to win with that guy.
Yeah.
And the only if I'm playing devil's advocate, trying to come up with, like, if I'm trying to defend the coach or whatever, if you thought Jackson Arnold's confidence was shot and trotting him out there against that Texas group with me at wide receiver and you on the other end at wide receiver for Oklahoma with their top 5 wide receivers, none of them out there, maybe that's not the time to do it. But it's the Red River game. And I agree 1,000%. If he really has been engaged, if he really has been looking whatever in practice or anything like that, we don't know what practices are going like, to not even give the kid a chance. I don't know. It was strange, but that was a dominant performance by Texas. And again, Oklahoma, it's a shame, man, that I know the brands that Oklahoma and Michigan are. At the Power 4 level, it's wild to say this. In the Big Ten and the SEC, that's 2 of the worst offenses. Yeah. Oklahoma is actually statistically the worst offense in the SEC right now. They actually are. Yeah. They're dead last.
And it got to a point where I felt bad for their defense. I mean, they were playing well. They just weren't getting any help there. And then midway the second quarter, just collapse, and you couldn't do anything about it.
Bowman and Stutzman, who came back this year, and I know they're getting paid handsomely to come back, so I don't feel too sorry for them. But they deserve better as far as play on the field as well. I mean, Bowman got that pick early in the game. Stutzman's making plays all over the place. Those are dudes, man, and they're going to be really good in the NFL. But they deserve better at Oklahoma for as good as they've been playing on defense.
Yep. All right, let's transition to our weekly Always Talking Ball Top 12 rankings. We've got a new number 1 team at the top. It's the Oregon Ducks, taking over the number 1 spot. Behind them at number 2, the Texas Longhorns, and then not dropping far from last week's number 2, the Ohio State Buckeyes. I'm not going to punish you that much. We're going into Autzen Stadium and losing a game 32-31, right? We didn't punish Georgia that much when they lost that game, at Alabama. So I think those 3 teams right now, though, from what they've shown on the field, regardless of competition, are a tier above everybody else. Because if you look at our number 4 team, Penn State, Penn State, not on the level right now of those 3 teams, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think so. But like, I will say Oregon has shown a couple of games early. Yeah, they were awful against Idaho and sometimes against Boise, whatever. Yeah, but they absolutely you beat the Buckeyes. You right? Yeah, that absolutely gets my attention way more than others. So I'm great with where we've got our top 4. We were matched up 100% on this. We were in lockstep 1 through 4 on this. I still believe maybe Penn State can build on what they built on the other day, but I agree. The teams that we have 1 through 3 seem to be what my eyeballs watching the game tell me are the 3 best teams in the country.
Yep. So we got Oregon, Texas, and Ohio State. Oregon is actually number 2 in the AP poll. Texas State at number 1. Ohio State only dropped to number 4. So Penn State is number 3 in the AP poll. That's probably as high as they've been in a very long time. At number 5, we both stayed status quo. And I stayed status quo on Alabama. Okay. And it's mainly because the teams behind them didn't do much to warrant like jumping. I'm like, Georgia winning a 10-point game against Mississippi State, not impressive. I know they probably, saved a lot of stuff, but they've got a lot of issues on the defensive side of the ball and in the trenches. Tennessee, we saw them go to overtime with the Gators. Miami was on a bye, so I just didn't really think of anything. So do I think resume-wise, or I guess not resume-wise, just like team on the field right now, what I'm watching, is Alabama the 5th best team in the country? Probably not. Resume-wise, they're up there like in the top 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And, power rating, would I favor them on a neutral field against teams? Yes. So that's kind of what we take into consideration here. So I had Alabama at 5. You still had the Canes at 5.
Yeah, I had Miami at 5 just because, to be honest with you, what you just said. I mean, Alabama has not looked impressive. Georgia has not looked impressive. Do I think they're still really good? Yeah, but they haven't looked it. Tennessee hasn't looked impressive. Miami hasn't looked impressive, but Miami's won all their games, and I'm giving them credit for doing that. At this point, it's still at a point in this. There will be a point in the season where, like, Alabama plays at Tennessee this weekend, or Tennessee plays Alabama this weekend. Georgia plays at Texas this weekend. When those teams play and they win, whoever wins these games, and Miami's playing whoever in the ACC that's not as good.
Louisville.
Okay, well, actually, that's a solid team, but like still, Louisville's not like one of the teams that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
But if Miami flounders around with a 4-loss team or whatever, Miami will drop on my rankings for sure.
Yeah.
But at this point in the season, I mean, I can't confidently look at that and say, oh, I think Alabama is absolutely just head and shoulders better than Miami. I just can't. So that's why I've given Miami the nod as of right now.
Yep. I had Miami at 9, so we average these things out. Alabama comes in at number 5 in our poll. They are number 7 in the AP. Georgia comes in at number 6. They are number 5 in the AP. Let's talk quick about Georgia. They had another guy arrested this week. That's nothing new. Kirby's over there shoving opposing players on the sidelines, and I kind of wonder what's going to come of that. If you're, the AD watching that, I mean, probably brush it off like he, was in the heat of the game, and
nothing.
I don't know.
That'll be more from the SEC, like at the top as far as Georgia AD, and nothing will come of that. But yeah, man, I mean, Georgia's they just don't look like Georgia right now. Alabama just does not look like Alabama right now. But there's a difference there. The biggest difference is it's still Kirby and his crew there at Georgia. Like I'm shocked at what I'm kind of seeing right now overall from Georgia. They didn't look good against Mississippi State. I mean,
it's been like that since the Kentucky game.
Yeah. I mean, Mississippi State's the worst team.
They looked at was Clemson.
Yeah, Mississippi State's the worst team in the SEC.
Yeah,
and Georgia, you could say maybe they weren't interested, whatever. But hey, for anybody that wants to throw it in my face, go ahead. Yeah, well, Alabama lost to Vandy. Yeah, they did. And Georgia didn't lose to Mississippi State. They still won the game. So, and there's other teams that are losing. But yeah, we had Georgia at 6. We had Miami at 7. I had them at 5, and you had them where?
9.
9, okay. So that we averaged it out, and they ended up at 7. Miami was on a bye this week. They play at Louisville this coming up week. We had Tennessee at 8. Where did you have Tennessee?
I had Tennessee at 7.
Okay.
And I mean, I'll admit, and we were kind of discussing this today, like, we might be a little high on Tennessee right now. I mean, obviously the AP has them at 11, and they dropped them 3 spots after that win. And I still, I question the AP because, like I mentioned to you, LSU is not leading until the very final play of that game against Ole Miss, and they happen to win the game that they've been trailing in the entire time, and the AP moves them up 5 spots from 13 to 8. And Tennessee has a similar type game against a worse opponent. I'll give you that. But they dropped them 3 spots, and I know they lost last week. We might have Tennessee too high. We're going to find out in 5 days.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. So they did not look great again in the first half against Florida. And props to Florida for coming out. It's a rivalry game. You know, those are usually going to be close. I thought Tennessee would come out and they would beat them pretty badly. And we both thought that they would sling it around the yard, and they didn't do it. And I mean, I guess it just might be a case where Heupel's sticking to his guns and sticking to the running game, because I think they had 26 attempted passes last night. And to me, that's just not enough, because that one drive they put together in the third quarter where they finally scored, they looked fantastic. I mean, calling quick running plays. Nico was 4 for 4 on that drive. He got into a rhythm. He was able to get into a rhythm. But man, they just, again,
it's time, man. We got to question it. Why does Josh Heupel not trust Nico?
We do have to question it.
Why is he not doing it? Why does he not putting the ball in Nico Iamaleava's hands? If he's as great as what everybody says he was supposed to be, and is what we have talked about him being, why is he not doing it?
Yeah. And I just they get the ball back with 8 minutes to go. They're up 17-10. And after calling run plays all game and all season and not letting your quarterback get into any type of rhythm, you would think Josh Heupel would continue to do that and he would chew clock, right? No, 2 straight passes. That's when he decides to call pass plays, right? And they're incomplete. And then on 3rd and 10, he calls a 4-yard run. They took 1:14 off the clock then with under 8 minutes to go. The next time they get the ball back, they're still up 17-10. There's about 4 minutes to go in the game. He does call 2 run plays here, and then a 3rd down pass that's incomplete to Chris Brazzell. They take 1:46 off the clock. Neither time did Florida have to use any timeouts at all. And what does Florida do? They get the ball back. They go right down the field. They use their timeouts that they had, and they score a touchdown. They send it to overtime. So I don't understand Josh Heupel's play calling right now.
I don't either. And the fact that he's not trusting Nico is, again, should be alarming if you're a Tennessee fan. Defense is playing well. I mean, they're running the football fine. They're not just dominant right now necessarily in the run game. But, maybe we'll see him trust Nico this week and they'll let it fly. I don't know. But
I said that this week, so I don't know. I mean, this is the final week for Tennessee, but they come in at number 8. 9, 10, and 11, we were pretty lockstep on Clemson, BYU, and Iowa State. And then number 12, we had a 3-way tie, and it was between they all averaged out to 13th overall, but it was LSU, Indiana, and Notre Dame. We kind of broke it down with the strength of record, the strength of schedule, the power rating, game control, and LSU really only came in last out of those 3 in one area, and that was game control. They had the slight advantage on strength of record, pretty big advantage on strength of schedule. And they just, they got the nod for us. So they slide into the 12th spot there, and they're number 8 in the AP poll, like I mentioned. So, again, to recap the top 12, we got Oregon, Texas, Ohio State at 1, 2, and 3. We've got Penn State at 4, Alabama 5, Georgia at 6, Miami 7, Tennessee at 8, Clemson 9, BYU 10, Iowa State 11, and LSU 12. Real quick, let's get to just a couple conference thoughts. Let's talk about, if you can give like 30 seconds or something on Pitt just squeaking by Cal, whether or not Pitt is a contender or a pretender.
They're not a contender. Like they're again, solid team. They're solid, man. They're doing a really good job. Narduzzi and that bunch. My boy Eli Holstein, who transferred from Bama, is doing a really good job for Pitt. Cade Bell, the offensive coordinator they brought in from Western Carolina. That's obviously the difference, but they're a good little team, man. It's a good story, but no, they're not a contender in the ACC. Not at all.
Yeah.
Clemson would beat the brakes off them.
Yeah, I think those two play here in a couple weeks.
Oh gosh, here we go. I say that. Pitt ends up winning.
Yeah, so
that's the way things go.
Are we surprised? Today's Sunday. Obviously, it's Sunday night. Are we surprised we didn't hear any news on Mac Brown after North Carolina just found another incredible way to blow a game?
No, I think they'll let him finish out the season, man. I mean, are
you surprised he hasn't resigned yet?
No, not necessarily. Yeah. I'm not.
Because he said 3 or 4 weeks ago, he's like, if I can't right the ship, if I can't figure it out, I'm going to resign. And I think they've lost every game since then.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll do a thing where he says, like, this will be it for me. and they try to do the win-win for the Gipper thing and win a few games for him at the end of the year, get
Yeah.
him to bowl eligible or something like that if it's
Yeah.
possible. But I think this is it. And I don't, dude, he doesn't look good, man. When I see him some of the interviews and stuff too, like it's old Mac needs to old Matt needs to go hang out on the beach somewhere, or sit back in the recliner, drink some good bourbon, and watch some football. But yeah, it's time for him to be done in Chapel Hill.
Yeah. And Louisville, I mentioned them earlier, struggling at UVA. Is it a case where they, kind of sandwich spot, where they obviously lost to SMU last week, but they got Miami on deck, going to UVA, only winning by 4?
Yeah, I just don't know what to think of the Louisville team at the moment. That was, again, SMU's a solid bunch, but when SMU beat them, I felt like that was a really bad loss for Louisville. They looked good the week prior at Notre Dame. I came away more impressed with them after the Notre Dame game, and then they go and lose to SMU. But I do think that was more of a 2 big games back-to-back, Notre Dame, SMU, on the road in Charlottesville, sleepy type game. They found a way to get the win. We see all these other teams losing these types of games.
Yep.
Now it's time for big game Brom against the Canes. More on that our next episode.
Yeah. Big 12. Man, I gotta do it, man.
Go ahead.
I am actually going. This is gonna shock you.
Ooh, I know what you're about to do. Go ahead.
I've got to throw some respect on Deion Sanders and Colorado, because I watched that game last night after I finished up doing another show, and I mean that was as good as I know they didn't come out on top. They lost 31-28, and the way that Shootout Sanders performed, the way that defense performed, I mean, full game, not just, last quarter, but full game without Travis Hunter for most of the game and without Jimmy Horn. They still can't run the ball. I mean, they had negative 27 yards rushing, but Shootout Sanders is out there doing it by himself with him and Wester and Will Shepard, who can catch half of the balls that's thrown to his way. But I mean, they do look better. And if they would have gotten that game last night, I would have looked like a fool. And I mean, I may look like a fool right now, but again, I wanted them to show me that they actually were a serious program and a serious football team. And last night, that thought came across me for the first time that, like, okay, this looks like a serious football team. They're playing what we have said and what we think is probably the best team in the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
And who went on the road and got smacked by BYU.
With one of the best coaches, with maybe the best coach in the Big 12.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I was impressed by the Buffaloes last night, I'll say it.
Yeah, I was too. And what I'm going to give ourselves a little pat on the back. And what I love most about what we do here on this podcast that I don't think enough people do, we'll admit when we're wrong. We won't sit here and try to make excuses or work our way around it or not bring it up.
I'm not saying I'm wrong.
Well,
I'm respecting them now.
Okay. Well, either way, we do that here. We, so yeah, great game, man. You're right. Defensively, they're definitely better. They seem to be better all the way around. Shootout is, I mean, he's the best. I've seen that he is listed as the best pro prospect, and he should be.
The ball just comes out of his hands different than any
man.
other quarterback I've seen in a long time.
He is very
At
legit.
least right now in college football.
At this point, and this is us saying this, at this point, if you don't think that this guy is for real, you're literally you're a hater. You are probably one of those that are just negative about everything else out there in life as well. This dude is legit. He really is.
Yeah.
And again, I can't imagine what he would be like, dude, on like some of these other, like the top tiered college football programs if he was their quarterback.
Like on Ohio State.
Yeah, good Lord, what he'd be doing. And I mean, he's doing it now, but like what he'd be doing even there too. But good for him, man. Good for him. Because like, but yeah, what a game. But as far as the Big 12 right now, Iowa State, Kansas State. I know there's some other teams up at BYU, yeah. Those two teams, Iowa State and Kansas State, are who I would have 1 and 2 right now. And that's no disrespect to BYU. I think BYU is a really good team. But that's who I think the two best teams in the Big 12 are at the moment. Arizona State's doing some wild things right now, too, and Kenny Dillingham. I hope you Arizona State fans out there, if any of you ever listening, I hope you dug into the pockets and donated to the collective, like Kenny Dillingham said. What a G, man, by the way.
Yeah. Unfortunately for them, they've got that bowl ban this year, so
Yeah.
they're playing for disrespect right now. But Big Ten thoughts. I don't know what world I'm living in where Wisconsin and Iowa are putting up over 40 points a game and just smashing opponents, but that's a crazy world. Illinois Purdue was a wild game. Illinois jumps out to a 27-3 lead and probably starts looking ahead to Michigan next week. And Purdue just out of nowhere. I mean, the entire season, if you watch Purdue, out of nowhere, they get a scoop and score, and then all of a sudden it's an offensive avalanche.
Did they?
And we were making fun. We were making fun of them in the first half, and something clicked. And I know they paid Hudson Card a lot of money there, and that does not look like money well spent because that quarterback they have, that freshman that came in, he played really well. And then just the Big Ten as a whole. Think about this. There's a real possibility that two of the three of Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State, two of those teams are going to be hosting a first-round playoff game this year. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be December 20th or 21st. And even in Eugene, Oregon, those three locations right there are not friendly on December 21st, which is the first day of winter. Those places will be cold, and it's a very high likelihood that they're going to be hosting playoff games.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Unfortunately, probably one of those teams could be hosting the Group of Five team. Yeah. But I would love to see an SEC team be one of those teams and just see what that looks like. But you're right, man. That Illinois Purdue game was wild. That ended up making it on my second TV because the Red River game became so ugly. Moving on to the SEC, Vandy, bro.
Some people actually bet against Vandy out there.
Somebody out there actually came on a podcast and said, Vandy just had the biggest win in program history. You just got to blindly take it. The other team, Kentucky's coming off a bye. After that, Vandy's still trying to get people to donate to NIL on Thursday and Friday. And all they do is just go out and take Diego Pavia and just teabag Kentucky.
Dude, it's a different Vandy team, and it's a different college football world we're living in.
It is, man. It is. I'm not going to go off on a tangent, but you said this during the summer. I wished I could go find the clip. Maybe we can find it. You were the first person that I remember talking about something about New Year for the playoff and all this stuff, and wonder if it could be like a 2007-esque, and you went on like a talk about like 2007, blah, 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 before the season even started. And it is. And what we're referencing is now what you hear Pate and even on ESPN Game Day and all this stuff. Maybe they all listen to ATB, man. Maybe they listen to Always Talking Ball. I don't know.
I hope so. Shout out to you guys.
Yeah, maybe they're subscribers. If you are, thanks for listening, guys. Yeah. But yeah, they're all starting to talk about it now. And it is, man. It's nuts, dude. Every week is just bonkers in college football right now.
Yeah. In the SEC as a whole, we got 8 teams that are 2-1 or better in conference. And at the bottom of those 8 teams is Alabama and Tennessee. And right above them is Arkansas and Vandy. They've got the tiebreaker over those two teams. You never thought you'd see the day. You got A&M up there at 3-0, Texas at 2-0. I mean, if those two teams happen to play twice, back-to-back weeks, we all thought it might be Ohio State, Michigan, right? Turns out it might be Texas A&M and Texas. So long way to go, but obviously just a ton of fun we're having here. G5 thoughts, like we talked about, it's kind of narrowing. The picture is narrowing a little bit. Lance has got 6 teams. I've got 5 that have kind of settled in. Unfortunately for my alma mater, Liberty, I think they're cooked. The way they're performing in games, they needed to really, really win by a lot of points in a lot of these games because their strength of schedule, notably, is very bad. And so I think, having FIU taking you to overtime at home, not a good look. So I think Liberty probably best served to not be in the playoff this year. But really, I mean, you got Boise State out there. You got Ashton Genty putting up another 200 yards, Heisman front runner right now. You got UNLV doing damage at Utah State. And you got Army, Navy, and Memphis, in my opinion. You got Tulane in there from the American, but Army and Navy, put respect on their name, right? The troops, they're finally in the top 25. Memphis is still there, but they've got the loss to Navy against them. And Army and Navy just keep absolutely trucking every team they play. And again, in a down year and a wacky year, like a 2007-esque year, you've got Bryson Daly out there and you've got Horvath from Navy. And now these guys are actually throwing the ball a little bit. They're not like your traditional triple option team. So they're putting up stats, and efficiency wise, they are top in the nation in quarterbacks. It's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. And you want to talk about crazy? I challenge all of you. I'd say challenge. I task all of you. Go look at Army and Navy schedules, especially Army, and tell me right now that there's not a pretty decent chance that those two teams could meet for the American Conference Championship. That would be, you brought it up a couple episodes ago. If they would meet for the conference championship a week prior to the Army-Navy game even happening, that would be unreal if that was a thing.
Depending on what happens in the Boise UNLV game in a couple weeks. If Boise wins that, they're going to have the inside track to that G5 spot. But if Army and Navy go into that championship game with wins over Notre Dame, which they both play this year, which is crazy because now Notre Dame's going to have possibly more ranked teams on their schedule, which is going to bump them up if they win that game. So it's just crazy the things that are happening this season that we knew it could be a crazy season, but a lot of stuff is happening that we're like, I mean, we did not foresee happening at all, right?
So no, not at all. But I think we've got it. You said you had the 5 teams. I had the same 5 as you, and I had Tulane just because Tulane played at Oklahoma. They played Kansas State tough. If they end up winning the AAC, and if Boise were to drop a game to UNLV and then some other goofy stuff happen, I still think Tulane is in it. But I think we can go ahead and say it's definitely narrowed down to the American Conference and the Mountain West, that the champion of one of those conferences are going.
All right. It's time for everybody's favorite segment, Guess the Spread, with my boy Lance Barton. Before that, I'm going to give you a couple bets. I'm back at it. I think I stayed away from early bets last week, but I'm back at it. You already know I'm on the troops, okay? Army minus 16.5 against East Carolina. Navy minus 17 against Charlotte. Those are big numbers, but if you've watched these two teams, and if you just even looked at the box scores, they are dominating. And so I'm gonna ride them until they fail me. So the other bet I made, the third bet I made, it was actually the first bet I made before Army and Navy. Nobody's expecting this one, Lance. I'm taking Colorado on the road in Tucson at Arizona. The Buffaloes +4. That's how much they showed me against Kansas State. I think Colorado can go in there, and again, they're going to have trouble shutting down the pass, okay? We know Noah Fafita, Ted McMillan, but I just think Arizona has been up and down, up and down. Colorado, they obviously went on the road. They got the road monkey off their back at UCF. They played really well against Kansas State. I'm going to back them, and if they make a fool of me, then all the respect they've earned from me is gone. So that's all.
Did not expect that.
Exactly, right? Hopefully people stuck around an hour and 18 into the show for that bet. They're at +4, so we'll see where that line moves. But guess the spread's going to be interesting tonight. I got quite a handful of games here, and we'll try to roll through them. But let's start off nighttime, Friday Night Lights in Provo, Oklahoma State at BYU.
BYU probably near a touchdown, so 7.
BYU minus 8.5.
Okay.
So let's dial it in here. Nebraska at Indiana, big noon kickoff, slated to be in Bloomington this week. Both teams coming off a bye.
2 of my favorite coaches in the sport, man. Old Siggs at home against Matt Rule. I'm going to say Indiana 4.5.
That's where they started off at. Indiana is now -6.
Ooh, some money coming in on the Hoosiers. Okay.
People on the Hoosiers, yep.
All right.
Big one in Como, Auburn at Mizzou.
Mizzou 7.5.
Mizzou -7.
7. Okay.
Yep. Big one in the ACC. We just talked about these two teams. Miami going on the road, playing at Louisville. Big game, Brom.
Miami at Louisville. Miami around a field goal, probably.
It opened up Miami -5, and it's been bet down to Miami -3.5.
Okay. Round a field goal. That's about.
People are with you. Yep.
Yep.
Interesting one out in Norman, South Carolina, going on the road again, taking on that powerful offense in the Sooners.
Two worst offenses in the SEC right now, statistically. I don't know. Kentucky may have caught up. Oklahoma, South Carolina. Good Lord. Oklahoma. 4.5.
Oklahoma -2.5.
Okay.
Basically even on a neutral field.
Okay.
Imagine that. Big one on CBS at 3:30 in the Big Ten. Probably an elimination game for both these teams. Michigan at Illinois.
There's no way. No way the Illini is favored, right? Is it Michigan 2?
Early
Two
line
and a
last
half.
week was Michigan. Early line last week was Michigan -3, and it's Michigan -1.5 right now.
Okay, close.
Yep. Notre Dame and Georgia Tech in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. So interesting to see how many Notre Dame fans will be there.
No Bobby Dodd.
Refuse.
I'm sure some of the fine folk there from that are big Notre Dame fans. Some of them live around the Atlanta area. Irish. I don't know, 7.5, 8.
Irish -8.5.
Oh, okay, close.
Yeah, you're pretty close. Yeah, we haven't even talked about Notre Dame because they played Stanford. They smashed Stanford. Didn't crack the top 12, but
They're getting close.
We'll probably talk about them here soon. Big game in Knoxville, Alabama at Tennessee.
Bama 3.
Bama 2.5.
Okay.
Still getting respect on the road. Probably with the way both teams have looked, that's probably a spot online. But I have honestly no idea what to do with this game yet.
No,
So
I mean, good.
Should be a good one either way.
Yeah.
I already gave you Colorado at Arizona. Arizona's favored by 4 right now. How about battle for the Golden Boot? Is that right?
Yeah.
LSU at Arkansas?
Yeah, LSU's at Arkansas.
Yep. Don't know if Taylor Green's going to play or not, so he's up in the air.
LSU 4.
LSU -3.
Okay.
Opened up at 2.5 and it's been bet up to 3, so we'll see where that goes.
Okay.
It was a frustrating night for Mountaineers backers on Saturday night against Iowa State.
Yes, it
again,
was.
West Virginia gets another home game at night against Kansas State.
Well, basically every good team that West Virginia has played lately, they've lost. So if I back Kansas State, I think West Virginia will win. So I'll probably just stay away from it because I would love to back Kansas State because West Virginia can't beat a good team. They literally can't. K-State. What was Iowa State? Iowa State was 3.
-3.
K-State 4.5.
No, K-State -3.
Okay. So that tells you what they think of Iowa State, K-State, probably pretty even.
Right.
Which is, that's fair. That's fair.
Farmageddon, baby.
Yeah.
All right, 2 left. Kentucky at Florida.
I would have thought before this past weekend, Kentucky might have been favored in the Swamp.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say Florida like 1.5.
Florida -2.
Okay.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say if Billy Napier loses this one, that might be all she wrote for him.
Yeah. Yep.
Last game and the biggest game of the weekend, Georgia at Texas, ABC primetime.
Kirby Smart and the Dogs going to be getting points. I'm going to say Texas -3.5.
Texas -3.5 is exactly what it is.
Okay.
Kirby will use that to his advantage.
He will act like they're 40-point dogs.
Yep. So interesting to see that game. We will be back on Thursday, and we will be talking about games like Georgia and Texas and Alabama and Tennessee and many, many more. Again, head to our YouTube channel, Apple, Spotify, X at AlwaysTalkBall on Instagram. We're everywhere. You can find us anywhere. If not, just make a comment. We'll reach out to you, whatever. So, again, we appreciate you guys sticking out. It was a long show. It was a jam-packed show. Tons of stuff on that October 12th that lived up to the hype. And we appreciate you guys sticking it out. And we will see you next time.